Hi, I'm Tyson,
I'm Colin.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Adam.
and we're the Gamesmiths, and we just got done playing the lake, and we want to talk to you a little bit about our experience. To kick it off, Ryan's got some thoughts.
Yeah, so first of all, I had fun with the game. It reminded me a lot of one of my favorite games that I used to play in high school, where you would do kind of that similar mechanic of playing out your whole hand, or more or less like every round was just playing once through the deck, and then you played out your whole hand, and so you couldn't, there was like kind of a forced cycling of cards, so you couldn't sit on your best cards towards the end. You just kind of had to like make your best plays as you had them, and you didn't get it. It was because the different ways that we played it that first time was very much kind of reminded me of when you know, like of being able to sit on the good cards towards the end and kind of let all that like tension build towards the end. But then it got a little like kind of everybody had too many good cards at the end, and it wasn't really as fun, I thought, as when we played through the advanced way, where I had to play out all of my cards, and I'm just like, well, I got to put this card down. Like
Yeah, that constraint really made it feel a little bit more like, when do I play this, and how do I play this? Because I know I'm playing
The
this
clock's
within the
on
next
there. It's going to
little
be
while.
out there.
Yeah.
Well, and I actually stacked twice. Somehow Lake Trout screwed it up both times.
Yeah.
But that last time I had 2 5s in my hand. There was a 5 down there, and I was taking a gamble that none of you in your last card or
Had a
last
5.
2 cards had a 5, because there was only one more 5 in the deck. I had 2 in my hands. It was a pretty good chance to grab that whole stack, and then someone threw a Lake Trout. And that happened twice to me. But I agree,
'Cause
the
that was me
advanced
each time.
the advanced was way different. It was much, much better than the basic.
I think it
And I
actually
think you
all
even
got
just start with
progressively
that.
better. Each variant we did, the
I did too.
advanced to then the expansion. Like having played all 3, I don't think I would ever go back to playing that base game because I had a lot better experience every other time, and I don't even know that I'd go back to just the advanced.
Right. You think you'd always play with the expansion.
Yeah, I would want to as well.
Yeah. We kind of skipped over it, but the rule book was good. There were a few there were like a few typos in there, and we had to make some corrections before. But the nice, you know, the kind of atmospheric mission statement at the beginning was a lot of fun.
He's big on that. He
And
likes
got us
the-
in that. Yeah, it's always
It was
nice to
fun.
have that, and it really is. It's nice
that's
for everyone.
huge
Like
for me,
you
yeah.
have to, because if it's not there, I have to think of it. Because if you don't, as a person whose job it is to explain to people how to play games, like if you don't have that clear statement ahead of time, like just having that, like, all right, this is what we're doing, and just even in my professional life, I find myself explaining a lot of processes to people, and you know, you always have a lot better time if you can be like, all right, here's the big picture. This is the journey we're going on, you know.
And he did that
Yeah,
well.
if people know where the destination is, it's a lot easier to get them there if everybody understands where we're going. And so that was very good and set up really well. There were a few kind of rules things that we worked out that you heard us kind of talk out and
The
decide, like, oh, this is what we
schools,
want to do,
the-
and this is the schools, and this is how it works.
Yeah.
So I'd make those a little bit more clear in the rules, especially with like the locations. Maybe just a little blurb. It's popular in a lot of games. Like you print what you want, whatever you want to print on the card was fine, and then just have like a little paragraph for each one inside the rule book to explain it more if people have like extra questions about like, okay, you know, do I get a
Right.
tie for the docks? And it's pretty clear it's higher, it's not higher or tied with, but having that kind of thing on the rule book, just spelling that stuff out is always nice for people.
Or just a generic take one fish out of the pond. What, can you take that from a school, or can you not?
Right.
Right.
And that was
You
that was
obviously
a little
can't eat
confusing.
from a
Yeah.
school, but can you take from a school?
Yeah. So figure out if we were playing those wrong, make it clearer in the rules. That's just kind of what we all decided was the fairest in the absence of a clear rule. But yeah, overall, I think the game does suffer a little bit from balance issues, and it may be like Adam said, at 4 players, there's a lot less incentive to stack cards, or I don't know. I would maybe force the action just a little bit more.
Well, and
I
some of
would-
those cards, like some of the Trout cards specifically, I think Colin mentioned it. In a 4-player game with the Trout that he played, it only put out 4 cards. But in a 2-player game, it's
Even
or
the
three cards.
both the ones that shuffle in and the ones that draw cards for other people. It's a big feel bad for the person who plays it because first of all, you
it could
have
potentially.
to play it.
But what I'm saying
Eventually.
is that I'm okay with it at a 4-player count being that 3. You don't get it. You had to play it. When do you play it? That's the decision you have to make. The concern I have with it is that it makes the experience from 4 players to 2 players vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
Because now you're saying that if I play this in 2 players, that means that they've got one choice on their turn. So if it's me and Ryan playing,
Right.
and I played the one with 3 cards, they've got one choice on their turn, or 2 choices, and I get one choice. So do I play that? So it gives the one person more opportunity to choose what they want.
That card definitely, like that card is a clear example of something that does not scale, that does not play the same at 2 players that it does at 4 players. So some games handle that by just putting like a player count on each card.
Or even if you played it, you got a point just for playing it. That would feel a little better.
But so my concern is not that it feels bad, because there are going to be things there. That was one of my favorite parts actually
Well,
about
it
the
did
game.
feel bad to
Well,
me.
that's fine.
And I had
a
a-
bad
right.
That can be the point of that card, though.
Yeah.
You can draw a trap card or a like it's red. It's a bad
Yeah.
card.
So for me, what I was going to say though is that when I have those cards in my hand, I have to decide when do I use this, because it creates an advantage for other people.
Right.
And so do I wait until other people die down all their cards? Because I had a bunch of Trouts in my hand throughout the rounds, and I was like, okay, at what point do I play this? Because it's going to change the state for everybody. Do I wait now until everybody only has 1 card? Is that the last card I'm going to play? Or do I try and do something else? And that was the fun to me, is making those decisions in my hand, and then having some things screw it up, like the Trouts that make you pass your cards to the right, or the bait cards and things like that. Those were the fun moments, the most fun moments to me, is having those plans, seeing, okay, I can try this, and then adapting to the situations that occur, whether that's other players choosing from the lake, or whether that's the bait cards or the trout cards. I liked that experience.
Yeah, and I would just say also, do take that feedback that it does feel bad to play those cards. Make sure that is your intention. If it's not your intention to have those cards feel bad, then know that and change them. So yeah, if the point of those trout cards were not to be feel bads, understand that they are like, this is a bad card, and you be like, oh crap when you get one. So that's one of those things that's more, it's fine to see it randomly pop up. Like I think it's fun to see it randomly pop up whenever we had one just like start around. But when you actually had to play it out of your hand, because you're never going to be able to school it, you're never going to be able to eat with it. It's just it doesn't do anything but just kind of like meh, So
And that was my point.
yeah. So
I think I have some feedback about the graphic design of the cards. I think, so you saw in the video, we all played the first round wrong scoring-wise. Probably Ryan didn't.
We played it right.
He
We just
corrected
didn't.
us.
We just
He
didn't know we
corrected
were
us at
playing
the
it.
end. So I don't know if you just
Right.
corrected us at the end when you looked at the rules, but I started playing the completely wrong way.
I also
I'm-
did.
That's
Yes.
So you have to think with your game. You have to think that you have to be aware of how most players are going to think about the elements of your game. So when I see numbers in a game, I'm going to be drawn more quickly to numbers and getting the higher numbers that I can, more so than thinking I'm trying to collect bass labels or what was the other one?
Trout.
Perch
Or,
label.
sorry, perch.
Perch labels. I'm trying to collect the label, which, I'm trying to collect the label versus I'm going to try to collect a number. So you're already disadvantaged in that. Most people are going to feel more used to and comfortable with collecting numbers. But on your cards, you're putting the number bigger in the top left where the eye's drawn to anyways.
Right. And when you're stacking.
As we read in the English language, we start in the upper left. So most eyes are drawn to the upper left. Then most people are more drawn to numbers. And so you're just setting people up to think, well, I took a 9 with a 10, that's awesome, but maybe it wasn't. I thought
Right.
I thought I did great,
Yeah.
even though Tyson collected a lot at the end. I was like, I still did pretty good in this round.
I felt that
and then
way
at the
too.
end, I was
Yeah.
like, 0 points. I just
Yeah.
got 0 points.
Taking a 9 with a
What?
1 is worth 2 points.
Right.
Taking a 10 with a 9 is worth 1 point.
Right, and that's
that
just
is,
weird.
Well, not even really actual points, just 2 bass versus 1
Right.
bass, right?
Yes.
And
Because a
I-
9 is a bass and a 1 is a bass.
I get the value in having numbers, so you can have that. It's not just big fish eats little fish, because then you have 2 categories. So I like having all the numbers, but if you just made the number smaller, put it in a different position that kind of
Right.
made it less important on the visually on the card, and then made the categories somehow feel more important. like
Definitely
right up
move
top, like
those.
bass,
Definitely move those bass and perch up to where you can see them when the cards are stacked up in front of each other.
That was an
That
issue.
definitely, because then you have to I need
'Cause
to
I had
lift up all the
different-
cards and look at
Well,
the bottom
it
corner.
was low in the corner, not lower right-hand corner, which is the last place
Yeah.
your eye goes.
Right.
It was small, it was thin, it was italicized. It feels like a footnote, but that is the
That's
thing
the
you're
most
collecting
important
in the
thing,
game.
Right.
Yeah.
And up, big, bold in the upper left, where your eye is drawn, is a number that's completely irrelevant to scoring. It's relevant to the. So it's just a graphic design thing that could help, really put forward what's important in the
Yeah.
game. And I don't think that was done.
And I'd
with the
agree
cards.
with you on the fact that it doesn't draw your eyes. Exactly what Adam said, that it felt like a footnote to me. At first I was like, oh, smallmouth, big mouth, those were the big important things because they were bigger, more important, and then the other ones weren't. But I'm going to actually contradict you a little bit on the number thing, and just as a way to identify the potential problem that I think Adam's experiencing here, which I also feel like I experienced. It's okay to have numbers in a game, and numbers that are higher not necessarily be more valuable than numbers that are lower. Take poker, for example. You get poker, and you get 4 2s, which is better than a single 10, right? So it depends on how you categorize it, but you have to know that. So it's okay to play with that a bit. The problem is that 4 2s collecting here were harder to understand. Like it was harder to achieve, and it just wasn't as intuitive as, say, poker, as like these are the scoring methods, this is how it works out. I think that you were trying to do similar things where you get 4 of a kind, and that's
And it was
worth the
hard,
point.
too.
But that's really difficult. But intuitively, I do believe that you feel like your numbers are better or set collecting is better. And he does have the set collecting in there with more of the same numbers are more valuable than a single number. But that feeling that you were talking about, I agree with, that I felt like, oh, the most efficient use of a 6 is to eat a 5. And that's...
Well, I don't think your statement contradicts. I'm not opposed at all to numbers. I'm just saying rearrange the presentation
the
of the
numbers-
card to really put forward what is important in the game. And it did feel like what was important was a footnote.
Right.
I think another thing that was feel bad for me was not scoring it all in a round. So I feel like I just invested a lot in this round, and I walked away with nothing for it.
That was
So
our first round.
And
I
that
think
was my last
making
round.
it
I scored
easier
nothing.
to score. You could still have the difference to where you're really highlighting who collected the most bass and who collected the most perch. You can make those much more valuable, but I think still give everyone some points. Even if I scored 2 or 3 and someone else scored 10 in a round, there's still that discrepancy. It still creates
Right.
like they definitely won, you definitely lost. But to invest that much and half the people not score anything is like, wow, this is kind of totally a wasted round. And then
Well, that's
the
why I
biggest
suggested,
scorer
like,
is scoring
the
3 or
trout
4
scoring
usually.
a point. So I felt like I at least got something. That's one of the reasons why I suggested that, because I felt like
Yeah.
that was a problem that people weren't scoring points, and you're like,
I do think that that's the same
that's
problem as being
very feel
identified.
bad.
And I
Yeah.
think that's the problem, is that it feels bad to feel like, well, that was a
anytime you feel
complete
bad in a
wash
game,
of the
it's like, yeah.
round.
Through you
yeah,
played
like
not
the
only did I
entire
have to play
deck
a
and
1, I
scored
didn't get
0
a point. At the
Nothing
end of the round,
happened.
I don't spend a point. So it makes even playing that trout even more feel bad because I didn't score any points at the very end, and that's
Right, and so like having the potential, the way I see you fix that kind of an issue, and there's probably multiple solutions to this, but the easiest way I see is you take the approach of there's one winner out of a round, and you're playing for, you take the points away, and you say that you're going to determine beforehand that we're going to play first to 2 wins goes, and then you go and say, okay, whoever won this round won, and then there are 3 losers, which is how it always would be in any game. You know, there's only ever going to be one winner.
Right.
But if you now just made the 3 people who didn't win, one of them got some points, the other 2 got no points at all. It just makes them feel that feel bad. That
right. But everyone's still only 1 point behind.
Exactly.
And like when you start up the next game or the next round, you know, shuffle up the deck and deal them out again. Yeah, you're only 1 point behind. You still feel like you're just 1 good round away from coming back, which is always kind of true, you know. In your game, it just makes it, you know, a little, because even at the end when we had that real runaway round in the beginning where no one was quite sure of the scoring, we still ended up pretty close. Like they were only 3 points away from winning, which is only one set away. Majority. You know, it's only one having the most bass away from winning, kind of thing like that. So,
but the number distribution makes it feel a lot further.
Right. So,
I still think that for me, a game like that, you mentioned Love Letter earlier off camera. To me, this game is not rapid fire enough to do the one you just won the round.
Yeah, because
and I can understand that.
Your turns.
But the
problem, not quite as
I agree with that. That was my first thought. But
game.
What I was trying to get at is that because Love Letter does that, it makes it feel like it's okay. I lost the round. It's okay that everybody lost the round because I got another chance.
Right.
And that's what I'm trying to say is that making the points. You have to do this math to feel like, oh, I got this many points for this thing. I have to do all this counting. It also slows that down, so that rapid-fire nature doesn't go as fast. But the amount of time you invest in a round in this game versus the amount of points or the potential for no points at all is disparate. It's disproportionate.
Well, I think that could be, that's part of the balancing that I think you were referring to earlier, Ryan. And I think that could be helped by just introducing more low, like Colin's saying, Trouts just score you a point, or however you want to do it. Maybe that's too easy. You just drew a point, and you don't want to give them away that easy. But I think introducing more small ways to score points. The games that I think I like the best that are of this type are ones where I feel like there's a big strategy where I can really go for it and try to get all perch or all bass and do one thing well and score big points. Or I can do a bunch of little tiny things well and almost score as many points as the one guy who did everything well. But there's just no little micro ways to score points. I mean, you can collect 4 trout, which is still an investment to get 2 points.
Right.
Especially in the game without the bait shop.
Base game. Yeah.
Or you can collect a set of 4, which is still another big investment for 1 point.
Because there's only 5.
I think there
so
should
it's like
just be
there's 2 out there.
some pretty rapid, some pretty quick ways and easy ways to score points, and then you can still, make your bigger ones bigger.
Right.
But I think overall in the game, part of the balancing is keeping those points closer.
Well, that's another thing that
maybe
you've just brought
more.
up is that we haven't really touched on is if you're playing a 2-player game and it's still you grab 4 of a kind, like it's easier to grab that when not as many people are grabbing the individual ones. So it's easier for me to grab.
Yeah, I'm not sure that the scoring is balanced out well enough.
Well, I think one of the ways you could fix that is to take 1 off of the, like not 4 having 4 of one, having 3 of one.
I think I think that absolutely. I don't think we want to. Any actual changes to your play and stuff like that is going to need balancing. So while I agree with a lot of the ideas here, I think that the big takeaway on this one is this game clearly needs to be balanced for the number of players that are in it, and it's not. Like, there is nowhere in here that says at 2 players you do this and at 4 players you do something different, and there should be. Because we can look at some cards that are, like Colin pointed out, this card is clearly a different, more powerful at 2 players. This is almost an advantage with 2 players, and it is a definite disadvantage at 4 players. So since you have these cards that just swap how valuable they are depending on how many players are playing the game, it says to me that this game clearly needs to have either different sets of scoring or rules or something for the amount of players that are in the game. And it doesn't. They're just not in the rules. So I don't know what exactly those would be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've had some suggestions here, but I would look into that. I think that's probably the core issue that you need to look at.
That and the graphic design, I would say.
Yeah, that and the graphic design. Not that like it was that your art was
yeah.
bad. It wasn't unappealing. It just did not deliver the information to the person that was checking it out. You know, that was looking at it. And the thing that's most emblematic, like Adam said, the Bass was written on there was the smallest word in the skinniest, darkest font, like hiding on the card. And that was probably the most important thing you needed to know about that card, because that's what made that card relevant.
And to even be able to see what your opponents had.
Right,
in their
and be
own
able to look
piles
quickly and
to
see, you know,
what
what's going
can
on.
go to who.
Oh, that's something I would have clarified. We played with all that as public knowledge.
yeah.
Should it have been? Should we
Yeah.
have been hiding our stacks
Yeah.
and letting people keep track of that, or is it one of those things like leave them out and let players deduce it?
I also have another suggestion too that might have mixed it up and changed some strategy around, is if we would have reversed the order as we played. I think that could add some depth.
Each round, so like
Yeah.
first time we go clockwise, second time we go counterclockwise. Yeah.
Yeah, because if I was like handing cards to Tyson, maybe I'm handing them to Adam instead, or
Yeah. I would also, if it's not a rule, if we were playing it wrong too, I wouldn't let people put down small fish not in schools if it's possible to put it in a school.
If there's a school available.
If there's one yellowfish out there and you're playing a yellowfish, you have to school them together. Like, just being able to put as many spots down as you want on the lake lets people skirt some of the fun of the game. The most fun of the game because I know we've been giving a lot of feedback and been pretty critical, but I do want to say that I did enjoy the game, and there were parts in it where I found there were some turns where I felt I was making some really interesting decisions and had some really cool stuff, but that was when there were bigger schools out. That's when we were getting down to okay, there's this big school out, I need to make it bigger, or I need to put something out that maybe I can eat, because if I'm the last person that eats, then I get to steal the whole thing. So there were definitely turns that I had some really interesting decisions to make, and like, this is really cool. But a lot of times just having the safety valve of being able, I'm just going to put this one out there by
I
itself.
think there were certain
Like,
times that
I would
putting it out so that like I could
right. So
I
maybe
have
not
the hope
force
to
it,
get it back.
So
to
maybe
me,
not force,
but
maybe not force the schooling, but don't allow infinite lake space.
Right,
Yeah.
maybe eight
find a
spaces
cap
or, some
somewhere.
number.
Once again, relative to the number of players.
Right.
I would figure out the number of players plus one. You can have 5 spots on the lake, or number of players plus 2, or
Right.
minus 1.
And then maybe school sizes that can't exceed, 4 or 5.
I think you would maybe need to
so
if
you
you
don't
end
get
up
mega
getting
school.
Well, I think that also, I mean, there's
It
a
might
natural
balance,
limit
'cause,
of like 2 of each, or it's going to triple.
That's
Someone's
true.
eventually going
That's
to
true.
take
You
3
probably
of it.
don't
Yeah.
do that. You're right.
So
Just limit lake size.
yeah. So I think because I think there's definitely a lot of fun to be had in this game. I did have a lot of fun, but there were some things that took me out of it that I found confusing, that that were, because even though I kind of and to me, and as a player and as doing what we're doing here, I enjoyed this because I felt there were a lot of turns with fun individual choices to make. But if I was just like playing this for fun and knew I was out of it from the beginning and still had to play through the deck 2 more times, I would be a lot less psyched to play it.
Yeah, I'm not coming back to this.
Right. But there was playing it as someone who's looking at it as a designer and as someone who wants to help people develop games. I see something, exciting here. Like, there were fun turns, there were like good choices. There were this isn't a game I've played before. Like, everything was new enough you know, like I can't say, oh, I've played a game exactly like this before. Like I can't draw any real parallels to it like right away. I mean, maybe you guys can. I don't know, but I can't. So to me, it was something new and it was fun and it was a new, different, fun way for my brain to think. But it didn't all quite come together the way that I wanted it to.
Yeah.
So I think overall, look at touching up your graphic design and just so it shouts at players what's important about the cards, and look at balancing issues with the number of players you have, and make it so people don't play through a whole deck and feel like they did nothing. So you know, there's a little bit, and maybe our playthrough was a bad example because Tyson scored so many points on that first one when we didn't have as good a grasp on the scoring, but it does still feel bad to play through a whole turn and end up with or through a whole round and end up with
and then
nothing.
tighten up the rule book.
Right.
Yeah, because if it's going to be a one-turn learning curve, and you're introducing people to this game, you're going to have the advantage way further than anyone else.
Yeah,
And
and you can even play like a fake
so
hand.
that might happen more.
If I was actually really
Practice
teaching
round.
you guys, we'd probably just play a fake hand and then go into a real 3-round hand. But all in all, I think you got a really interesting game here. I think you definitely have something that you can make into something new and fun and fresh. But tighten up the rule book. Focus on getting those fun decisions in the turn to, you know, actually end like, oh, I made a lot of fun, good decisions. I got some points for it at the end of the round. Balance it for the right amount of players and do some tweaks to your graphic design. And I think you'll have a great game on your hands here. So thank you very much and keep up the great work.